Interfaith San Antonio Alliance, and we are part of this effort. There's a lot of confusion between the names Interfaith Welcome Coalition, which is a completely different organization than mine, which is Interfaith San Antonio Alliance. So let me just clarify that. Our organization is about bringing communities of faith together to accomplish good things for the community. And it is not our typical work to be involved with specifically refugee and immigrant populations, but in this case, when it's so important for our new Afghan arrivals to have a support system, then it seemed like a natural thing to work to bring together congregations of all faiths to be a part of that process. So that gives you a little background on what my point of entry is in this work, and likewise my joy of working with Nadia and Nader in their work with Culturinga. Nader?
Hello, everyone. My name is Nader Al-Mehdoui. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with Culturinga. It's good to see you here.
And just to give a little more context on Culturinga, we're a 501c3 nonprofit here in San Antonio, and we focus on celebrating the people and heritage of the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, including celebrating the many gifts and assets that our new refugee and immigrant neighbors bring with them from their home countries, and helping to facilitate exchange of culture and skills between all residents here in Bexar County. So I'm going to start to share my screen. I have started the recording of this for people who are not able to join. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go through a little bit of background information for context for those of you who may not be fully aware of the situation with the Afghans, and then we will go into more detail about the program. So a little bit about the current situation. There is over 95,000 Afghans will be arriving here in the United States on Afghan humanitarian parole, which was something that was authorized by the Biden administration in August through a special program called the Afghan Placement and Assistance Program, or APA program. And so these Afghans come to the United States through partnerships through three main government agencies: the Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, and once they arrive here, the Department of Health and Human Services. And the number of Afghans expected to come to Texas is it's the second highest state after California. And of the 37,000 APAs that have been approved, almost 5,000 will be settled in Texas, and many, many more thousands are expected in the months after that. And then within San Antonio, we're expecting about 1,200 or more APAs. Many of them have already arrived. Catholic Charities is one of the resettlement agencies here in San Antonio that works with those three federal departments that I mentioned, and they have resettled to date 273 cases, which consists of 722 individuals. So a case can be a family, or a case can be an individual, and oftentimes families have between 4 and 10 children, so that's the difference between the case number and the individuals. And then Raíces, which is another resettlement agency here in San Antonio, has resettled 71 cases, which is 225 individuals, and they're continuing to resettle more and more every week. To give you a little bit more context on the role of those refugee resettlement agencies, there are 3 here in San Antonio, as I mentioned already: Catholic Charities and Raíces, which is the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services. And then just recently, the federal government authorized Refugee Services of Texas to open an office here in San Antonio. And they are just ramping up and have hired their local director and expecting to also resettle many refugees. And what those resettlement agencies do is sort of depicted in the infographic on the right side. They are charged with really critical, basic foundational needs for these refugee families: finding housing, picking them up from the airport, doing medical screenings, applying for welfare benefits, enrolling in schools, and things like that. And that's all things that are done in the first 90 days of sort of like this critical time period to get them resettled. As you all are probably aware, there is housing shortage in San Antonio, and so that has been a continued struggle, and many of those refugee families are resettled initially into Airbnbs or extended stay hotels until the refugee resettlement agencies are able to find them permanent housing. But those are all things that are really the role of the refugee resettlement agencies, but there's so much more beyond what they're able to do within the scope of their work that really can support the long-term integration of these refugee families. And that's where the Community of Welcome program comes in to help extend and support that work to support broader integration. So I'll hand it over to Wendy now to talk a little bit more about that.
Thanks. Recognizing that 90 days will fly by when a family is new to a community, new to a language, new to a culture, and just in shell shock, to say the least, given the circumstances that most of these families will have endured. It's so vital for the community to come around and walk beside them. You know, that was part of the beauty of our SA Welcome Walk a couple of weeks ago, that symbolism of recognizing the journey they've been on, the journey they continue, and that we're walking with them, that we're here to offer support and offer an integration into the community. So this community of welcome, to answer Nazli's question, what are we here for? We're here to help you buy into this vision of becoming a community of welcome within the organization, congregation, business, whatever the case may be, the group that you're interested in working with to create this community of welcome around one or more Afghan families. So in the coming months, our work is to create a framework to help you develop those relationships. And one's a soccer league, there'll be dinners, more community days akin to what was experienced at the Welcome Walk, exploring SA together, just doing some of the day-to-day kinds of routine things of helping people learn better how to use the grocery store, how to use public transportation, library, all those kinds of things. And then absolutely critical is giving them some tools for employment support. Next. So who can become a community of welcome? Well, we need every group that's going to be working with us under a legally registered organization, congregation, or business operating in Bexar County. However, if there are individuals who are like, I really want to do this, but I don't fit in any of those categories, well, we are happy to take your information and fold you in with a group that is a recognized and registered organization. This is all about community building, all about relationship building. And then specifically, we need each of those community of welcome groups to have a lead liaison, someone who is our contact person, so that we know when the dinners are taking place, who to reach out to, who's going to be the one to disseminate the information to the others. Thanks.
So this is just an example pairing of just a scenario to give you a little bit more context for what this might actually look like in practice. So an organization, congregation, or local employer who's interested in becoming a community of welcome will sign a partnership agreement and formally partner with Culturingua and Interfaith San Antonio Alliance. On paper, that will actually be a memorandum of understanding signed with Culturingua, and we'll talk more about that shortly. But it's at that leadership level that there's an agreement to have this partnership. And then within that organization, or congregation or employer, there would be a core team that would have a team lead and let's say 4 team members. It doesn't have to be 4, it can be less, it could be more, it depends. But that would be the core team that would be responsible for coordinating activities with the Afghan families, transportation to and from those activities, bringing in other community members or fellow employees or congregation members where appropriate. And then Culturingua and Interfaith San Antonio Alliance, through a formal partnership with Catholic Charities and Raices, will assign or pair different Afghan families or individuals with each of those core teams or communities of welcome. And so let's say that in this case, we would identify 4 Afghan families that we feel make the best fit based on where those families live, how old their children are versus how old the children are of, let's say, the congregation members, various factors that kind of help us do this matchmaking, I guess you could say, across the different communities of welcome with all the Afghan families that have arrived. And then that core team, as I mentioned, would also in certain situations, and we'll talk more about that, bring in, let's say it's 500 community members, they would bring them into some of the events as applicable and sort of expand the opportunities for people to build those relationships within their broader organization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the formal sort of administrative upfront activities before we get into more details about the 5 areas of activities that Wendy went through. So the first step is to apply on this website. That's a Google form that is now live. So you'll fill out information related to becoming a community of welcome. That application is due on Sunday, January 9th. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, but that application is now live. And Nader, if you could place that link in the chat. Then we will go through an exercise to sign what's known as a memorandum of understanding, which is really just another way of saying a partnership agreement, that we agree to be partners in this exercise. And each organization, it'll detail what does the community of welcome say that they will be willing to do as part of this partnership. What will Culturingua and Interfaith San Antonio Alliance do as part of this partnership? It will actually be signed formally with Culturingua because there will be information related to the data sharing clauses, because this is sensitive client data or individual data that we will be sharing with you. And we have that, Culturingua has that formal agreement with Raices and Catholic Charities. And so we just want to make sure that there's sort of this legal framework set up for sharing that data with you all as communities of welcome. Then we'll ask that the core team go through background checks. So you'll designate this core team, which would be a leader, and then also a number of other organizations. And then we'll ask each core team member to go through a name-based background check. So it'll be a criminal background check, but just based on your name and driver's license and social security number. There's not a fingerprint. It's not a fingerprint-based background check. So we'll provide more details about how that process would be administered. And again, that is because you'll be working with families, including minors, and so it's just a standard process that we go through. And then we will ask each member of the core team to go through a community of welcome training. So we'll have those trainings on Saturday, January 29th and Saturday, February 5th. It'll be the same training both days, and different team members can go on different days. So, and we'll release more information about the time and location. I'll hand it over to Nader now to talk about the first of those 5 activities within the Community of Welcome program, which is the soccer league.
Thank you, Nadia. So one of those activities is the soccer league, which is basically we're trying to have teams that consist of some of the Afghan refugees and the American or residents of San Antonio together and play, and we want to divide them by gender and break out by age, as shown here, basically 4 to 6, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, 13 to 15. And I am also interested to do adults if there's interest in people to join to do an adult team. We will have only 5 games total, and we would play at the Raymond Remkes Park in Leon Valley, very close to Medical Center. The games will be every Saturday, approximately from February 19th to March 26th. So as I said, this is, and I shared the volunteer. If you are not part of, if you're not part of an organization or a business or legal entity, and you are still interested to volunteer, we would love to have you be part of this. I shared the link for volunteers, individual volunteers, in the chat, as well as the application for the legal entities. Next. The other event that we are planning to do is also dinners, and dinners consist of 2 dinners, one in I would call them the welcome dinners, one in February, the 2022, and one during the month of Ramadan, which will be it's the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. It will be this year will be from April 3rd to May 2nd. Basically, the community of welcome will host one or both of those dinners during those months, and when you do so, just, and we can share this in the training, more in the training that we're planning to provide to the organizations. No, the Afghan communities do not eat pork or any product that has pork in it, like lard. Some of the products are not known or not common to know that has pork. For example, marshmallows, they do have pork unless it says otherwise. Which gelatin, basically gelatin would have pork. And the dinner during Ramadan, it's usually always at the sunset, which is in April, will be around 8 p.m. this year. We will be able to provide the organization support in terms of interpreters for Pashto and Dari, and we can share more of those information and the support we will provide to the organization of welcome during the training. And yes, kosher or halal meat food is advised for the food.
Thanks, Nader. Community days. If you were able to be with us for some or all of the first annual San Antonio Welcome Walk on December 4th, it was a joy, and you can see the pictures on your screen. We had a good crowd there, lots of the Afghan refugees, thanks to our collaboration with Catholic Charities. They were able to provide vans to do pickup. And then Michelle, I know you were there, and it was just an exciting day to see people coming together, caring about each other, and welcoming people who, as we know, have been through so much. We were honored that the mayor was able to join us and basically bless our work, if you will. And it was so fun, in particular, because one of the great additions that we didn't even plan way in advance for, because all of this has been happening kind of one thing after the next, but there were a series of booths of interested parties, vendors, social services, etc., that came and were part of what we did. Now, this was so helpful, and this is something that I can see would be helpful for community days going forward. So, for instance, we had a table set up where people could receive their COVID vaccine right there, right on the spot. There were fun things like henna painting, a variety. But for instance, in two different instances, individuals came up to me asking for specific areas of help, things that I have no point of reference with, that personally, myself or my organization, I couldn't accommodate. However, because these booths were set up and these professionals were there, I could readily say, well, let me take you and introduce you to this person. Let me take you over here and help you connect with an ESL class. It was so extraordinary, particularly to know how the whole community was willing to just come together with very short notice to make this happen. And so now that we'll have a little more lead time going into our community days in the spring, heaven only knows how great they'll be. And the next, exploring together. This is a really vital part of being a welcoming community. So much of what happens is in the everyday details, things that we completely take for granted as local residents. You know, here in San Antonio, we all belong to this cult called HEB, and it's a normal thing, right? We go in, but I have experienced previously in other circumstances when someone who is new to this nation, particularly someone who's not used to a supermarket, they walk in and it can be absolutely overwhelming. I mean, just think about the toothpaste aisle. There's 50 kinds of toothpaste. How do you decide? How do you know which is the right toothpaste? Well, just those kinds of everyday experiences, it's so helpful if a local person can go with a refugee and help them walk through and understand the process of grocery shopping in that kind of environment. Likewise, the local library, there are all kinds of resources in our community that you know about, use, take for granted, that are all new to our refugee friends. So this idea of exploring together is really part of the heartbeat of this whole program when it comes down to developing meaningful relationships that are of great help to our Afghan neighbors. Now, you'll note here at the bottom, it says a phone interpretation line can be provided so that the communities of welcome members can obtain live interpretation services while they're in the process, because that's a really overwhelming piece, obviously, the knowing how to communicate. And, you know, there's only so far that Google app can take you. So that's part of our commitment to you, and what we're going to make available are phone lines where you are able to call in and make immediate use of an interpreter. Employment support. This is an area that Culturinga and therefore Nadia and Nader have been very involved in. Not something I know a lot about, but again, that's the beauty of this collaboration, right? That different people have different areas of expertise, but it is vital for our Afghan friends to find employment, to find meaningful work and sustaining work. So there may be lots of kinds of jobs that are day labor kinds of things to start with, but we don't want anyone to feel like that's all there is. So the employment support is also tying into what are their skills, what are their capacities that they can capitalize on in a new culture. And we'll all be a part of that. I know we have some significant interest from a couple of large employers who are working with us in this Communities of Welcome project as well. The other thing that we welcome is your input. We know that the largest employers in the United States are small business. So we don't want to just rely on the big guys when lots and lots of jobs are out there needing people who are in small business, and we're counting on you and the people in your community to help us know about those opportunities. Now, the timeline for all of this, it's all kind of laid out here for you. What's helpful to know is we're not expecting nor requiring any one group to do everything. If you want to, great. If you've got the resources and the people and the support, don't let us get in your way. But at the same time, you may decide, okay, we can wrap our head around doing the Exploring San Antonio and the dinners. That's what we can do. Or maybe you got a lot of kids in your community and you really want to be a part of the soccer league. You see things are laid out on this timeline, and when you get to the application process, you'll be able to mark which kinds of activities you're willing to commit to that are meaningful and helpful for your community. Now, the other thing that can be very overwhelming when you look at all of this is, how am I going to remember all this? Well, don't worry, we got you covered. We'll be sending you the PowerPoint as well as the link to the application.